All right, buckle up for this deep dive, because we are going to be talking about Sean Diddy Combs.
Oh, yeah!
But not the music mogul. Not the hit maker, not the guy we're used to seeing.
Right.
This story comes straight out of a courtroom.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. The charges, they're heavy.
Yeah, heavy is an understatement. I mean, the CNN and Espanol report we're looking at here, this paints a picture, and it's pretty shocking, especially considering Diddy's,
Public persona.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a guy, 30-year career, went from intern to, titan of the industry.
Exactly. This is a guy who is synonymous with success, synonymous with the American dream.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So to square that with the Department of Justice indictment on this level, it doesn't get much bigger than this, accusations of racketeering conspiracy.
Yeah, this is different. And it's not just the racketeering. We're talking sex trafficking, transporting individuals for prostitution, obstruction of justice. This is not a celebrity scandal. This is serious.
Okay. So racketeering. For those of us who don't have law degrees, what do we talk about when we say racketeering?
Yeah, you're right. It's not. You don't hear that word every day, basically. What it suggests is that there's a pattern of illegal activity, and often this means it involves an organization. So you think of organized crime, usually, with violence or intimidation. So it carries a lot of weight.
Okay, so not just a one-time thing. We're talking about
A pattern of behavior.
a pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
And to add, to add fuel to the fire here, the report highlights that Diddy was denied bail. That's not typical, is it?
Not at all. And the prosecution really honed in on that he was a potential danger. And that argument clearly held more water than Diddy's team coming back and saying, well, he's a public figure, he's not going to flee, remember. Being denied bail, a lot of times that can point to the severity of the charges, the possibility of flight risk, witness tampering, things like that.
And then you layer on top of that, that witness intimidation is one of the charges. It's like a bad movie. Are we talking about the same Diddy who has extravagant parties and record-breaking deals and all this?
It's a stark contrast, there's no doubt. And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because the judge wasn't convinced by, the defense's proposal to do a GPS tracker, house arrest, things like that. So clearly, that concern about him interfering was a major factor in this decision.
Wow. So we've got potential danger here, possible witness tampering. And we got accusations that go way beyond Diddy himself. So where do we go from here? What's next?
Well, a series of hearings to figure out the actual trial date. Since he's been denied bail, his legal team, they're going to want to push for a speedy trial. But even then, we're probably looking at months, not weeks.
Months. Months in jail awaiting trial. That's a long time for anybody, let alone a guy who lives Diddy's lifestyle. And speaking of his lifestyle, how does somebody like this even begin to navigate this? You mentioned witness tampering. What about the jury? I mean, how do you find an impartial jury in a case like this? In the Southern District of New York, no less. That seems impossible.
Yeah, you're right. To flag that's going to be incredibly complex. I mean, you got a potentially liberal-leaning jury pool in New York. You've got Diddy's fame, his public persona, and then on top of that, you have the nature of the accusations. So, yeah, right out of the gate, you've got a recipe for potential bias.
Yeah, it makes you think about other high-profile cases where it felt like the court of public opinion was almost as important as what was actually happening in the legal proceedings. I mean, this report, it even mentioned Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, and that comparison, it's not something to take lightly. I mean, obviously, the specifics of what's being alleged, they're different. But when you think about how serious these charges are, high profile, the media frenzy, you can't ignore those parallels.
It feels like this could easily become a spectacle. With everybody watching, everybody weighing in.
Oh, absolutely.
Regardless of what the evidence actually says.
Right.
So is Diddy's fame helping him or hurting him in this situation?
It's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
On the one hand, resources, connections, a massive platform to kind of control the narrative to an extent. But that fame also brings a lot of scrutiny, a lot of skepticism. And, past actions, past statements, those can all be re-examined in a very harsh light.
So how do you even begin to select a jury that could put all that aside and judge this case based on the facts?
Well, you're going to look for people who can show that they can be impartial, people who can separate Diddy, the persona, from the allegations. And honestly, it would not surprise me if they really grill these potential jurors on their media habits, how much they know about this case already, what they think about celebrity culture, what they think about the justice system, the whole 9 yards.
It's like you need to find somebody who lives under a rock, but also understands the music industry and the legal system inside and out.
Basically.
And the potential sentence. If he's found guilty, we're talking serious time.
Yeah, we are. Especially if they go with this racketeering conspiracy angle, the sentence could be substantial. And look, it's important to remember he's innocent until proven guilty, but that possibility of a really lengthy prison sentence, that just adds another layer to an already high-stakes situation.
It's like we're talking about two different Diddys.
Wow.
You've got the one we thought we knew, the music mogul, the icon. And then you have this other figure.
Yeah.
Who's facing these incredibly serious charges.
Yeah.
So what do we do with that disconnect?
It's a huge question. And it speaks to this issue of public image versus reality.
Right.
We build these celebrities up almost to this mythical status. And we forget that they're just people with their own flaws, their own vulnerabilities. And I think this case, it forces us to sit with that dissonance. We have to grapple with the idea that someone we might admire might have done some really harmful things, maybe even criminal things.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. I mean, on the surface, it's a celebrity trial. It's almost like entertainment.
Right.
But then you peel back the layers, and you have to think about power, accountability, and how these systems often protect people at the top.
And that's the kind of thinking that we need to be doing about this. Because it's easy to get caught up in the headlines, in the speculation, all of that. But at the heart of this
are the accusations,
right?
The potential that harm was done.
Right.
And we can't lose sight of that.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder about the ripple effects here. We talked about what this could mean for Diddy. But what about the music industry in general? Could this case, regardless of how it turns out, force some kind of reckoning? Like a deeper look at how power works in that world? Yeah, it's possible. I mean, we've seen this in other industries, right? Where you have these big cases, they expose these systemic issues, and then people start demanding change. So if these accusations against Diddy, if they lead to a broader conversation about exploitation, about abuse of power, and the need for accountability in the music industry, that's huge, no matter what the verdict ends up being.
And it's bigger than music, right? It feels like this is about how we deal with accusations against any powerful person. I mean, do we just let wealth and fame protect people from consequences, or do we hold them to a higher standard?
Absolutely. I mean, this goes way beyond just what's happening in the courtroom. It's about how we think about celebrity, about power, about justice. It challenges us to think about how we contribute to this culture where certain people
are basically untouchable. It all goes back to that question of the public image versus the accusations. How do we square those two things? The Diddy we thought we knew, and what we're hearing in court.
That's the million-dollar question. And there's not an easy answer, is there?
No.
We have to fight that urge to jump to conclusions. We can't rush to judgment. We have to let this legal process play out, weigh the evidence, and just understand that it's complicated.
Complicated is right. We started this deep dive talking about a music icon.
Right.
And here we are talking about the law, cultural criticism, ethical dilemmas. I mean,
it's the beauty of a deep dive, right? You start with one story, in this case, that CNN and Espanol report. And it just opens up all these other questions.
It really does.
About power, about industries, and about what we all do to either support those systems or to challenge them.
I wish I could wrap this up neatly. But the reality is, this story is just getting started.
Right.
The legal battle is just one part of it. And then the conversations it's starting. Those could go on for years.
Yeah, and I think what we can do right now is just offer some things to think about. Different ways to look at what's happening. Like, what does this tell us about the music industry and its relationship to power?
Right.
How does Diddy's fame, his influence, how does that change how people see this? And how does that affect what happens in court?
It's a good question.
But I think the biggest question of all is, what responsibility do we have?
We as listeners, as fans.
Exactly. We consume this music. We're part of this culture, so we have to hold these powerful people accountable.
It's like you said.
We need transparency.
We can't just jump to conclusions. Pay attention to the details. And don't be afraid to have your mind change. This is a deep dive that's going to stay with us long after the gavel drops. So until next time.